everybody? It's your boy, the VSW Stunner. We're another episode of the VSW. Tonight, we got a very special guest, the one and only human monster truck, Harry Von Vicious.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime, I've been a fan of yours for quite some time now. I mean, it's been a few years. I first caught a glimpse of you at NCW. It had to be around 2017, 18-ish. You were rocking this very stylish money suit. And I caught a glimpse of it. I was like, this dude's awesome. He's like a modern day Ted DiBiase. This is great. And I've kind of just followed you from there, and your career has changed from there dramatically. You've reached new heights in different countries, and it's so much has transpired even from that point. But it's been an honor to get you on the show, because like I said, you've been someone that I've been watching over the years, just grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. It's the time you first saw me around 2017-ish would have been when I had just moved back to this coast. And since then my career's gone in a lot of directions I couldn't have predicted at that time. So yeah, it's been quite a ride the last 7-ish years.
Now, is that when you got into wrestling? Was it about 2017, or were you wrestling prior to that?
Yeah, so I debuted in 2008, January of 2008, actually out here on the East Coast. I'm from Massachusetts originally. Trained with Kevin Landry at the Pro Wrestling Combine out here in Western Mass. And Kevin Landry owned the school, but I was really training mostly under Aaron Morrison, Johnny Idol, at the time, Doc Heresy, and our head trainer was Thomas Santel. I owe those guys a lot. I wrestled here for a couple of years, and then in 2009, moved out to California, and I wrestled out there the whole time as well.
Wow. How was it out there on the West Coast? Was it a lot of differences at the time?
Yeah. At the time, now it's actually a lot more similar to out here. Present day, there's some amazing companies out there doing really big stuff, and you see some incredible stars come from there that are, getting out and going all over the place. At the time, though, California was a little bit of an island because it was just so far away from everything, and there was so much less money in the indie wrestling world. The prevalence of streaming services and even social media within pro wrestling really hadn't grown the way it has now. And so it kind of meant that you were just stuck to your local market at the time. And which, the companies were good then, but they're a lot better now.
Yeah, I mean, now it's not unheard of for guys and girls just to hop in their car and drive, across the country if they want and just go to a show. It might be one booking, and but it's something that they want to do. They want to get their name out there, and it's an opportunity, and it's not out of the range. Like you said, it can be. Obviously the prices, it might not be 100% where you want it to be, but it's definitely far better than it used to be. Especially even it doesn't even matter what part of the indie scene. I feel like back in the day, it was still very, people use favors, and they still do today, but it's looked at as so much more now. People are treated with more respect. Their time is treated with more value. So in this case, they do get paid better, and they get paid. I know it's not perfect everywhere again, and I can't speak for everywhere, but at least, the promotions that I go to and I check out, and I've seen, a lot of guys and girls that you probably know wrestle for, you don't hear of any issues, It's not widely heard of, things happening where all of a sudden people aren't getting paid, or people are working for, having to work for free, or, crazy situations. But, back in the day, it was harder for people to kind of get out there. But it kind of also gave it, that's why I asked what the difference is. It gave places unique flavors, people that were coming out of the West Coast with different styles than people that were coming out with this, Killer Kowalski Northeast style. and everybody had their own kind of this unique way of wrestling. Where yes, now today it's kind of blended in a little bit more.
Yeah, when I was training out here on the East Coast, I started training in '07. Um, it was very much that the very old school Killer Kowalski, the little bit of the Hart family flavor had kind of made its way down. So it was a lot of technical work, a lot of anything you did that was very character based was on not really evolved much since the '80s. It was a very sim that's sort of how that rich snob character came about, was that character would have worked in the '80s just as well as it worked in the early 2000s. And that's just where things were at the time. When I got to California, though, like you say, the different styles, the lucha influence out there was strong, and it was great because I got out there. I trained with we all know big time wrestling out here, but there's a big time wrestling on the West Coast, and I trained there with Jason Styles and Shane Cody, and they taught me really they taught me anything I could do that was high flying, or even being on the receiving end of high flying. That was where I learned that, and it definitely made me a more well-rounded wrestler and prepared me for a lot of things that would come later. Because knowing that stuff came in real handy when I made it to Japan this year.
Yeah, yes, that's for sure. And and just changes in style can bring on those kind of changes in character. Because like you said, the money suit guy was like I said, a classic iconic role, and it really did, like the show that I saw it on. Anyway, was at NCW. It fits the role, it fit the show. It needed that character for whatever reason it might be. It worked. It was beautiful. But like you said, it was a very simplistic character. There wasn't a lot of depth to it. You're a rich snobby, wear a money suit. You can only go so far with it. Where now,
There's
and then I
also
saw you kind of evolve a little bit more, and you went tag team, and you teamed up with Tomahawk for a while there, and you were doing your thing there with, at the time with him, and and it would later, he would disappear, and you would work with Rip Bison, and you really start to form Mad, and I got to see you work under a different light. Which was cool because, like I said, I like to see wrestlers with work a variety of range. Now I've seen you work the bad guy, and you did a great job making the crowd hate you. Now you're working, like I said, with Tom Hogg and Rip, you brought the fans were, cheering you. So now you were this fan favorite, and you were under a different, kind of light, and you were showing another range, and you were playing it very well. And you started, starting to get bulkier and beefier, and you're meeting up, and again, I was starting to notice styling changes of style kind of coming into play. So this might have been around the time that you kind of started to soak things up from California, and started to like implement it.
yeah, it's so interesting because like the rich guy character lent itself so well, especially when I was new, to my body type. When I very first started wrestling, you probably wouldn't know it looking at me today. I was a big chubby kid. I was like 300 pounds. Um, and not a good 300 pounds, because 300 pounds can be fantastic, but it wasn't on me. Yeah, I was just I was a unathletic heavy kid, but being a rich snob, that could make sense. And then as time went on, I lost a little over 100 pounds, uh, having at one point, probably around 2012, been down to like 185, which at 6'3" was too skinny for me. But that still works for the rich snob because
Yeah,
you don't believe in him. He has to cheat. He's too small to really be a threat.
yeah.
And
Because I was gonna say,
then
when I saw you, you weren't that heavy, but you were very kind of slender, but you didn't have the muscle mass yet. You didn't
yeah,
have that like I said, the bodybuilding, and really that human monster truck that you are today. It wasn't there.
well, and that's exactly where the transformation came from. When I came back to the East Coast, every wrestler has we jokingly refer to them as road wives. It's our friend in wrestling that we're always on the road with. It's your travel buddy. It's someone you can rely on, and you know that they'll do their share of the driving. You know, you'll both split gas. You know, and you both have similar goals. And for me, that was and I'm fine saying that they were the same person. I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah, yeah.
Tomahawk Rip Bison. The first day I met him, he was doing ring crew for PvP. He had shown up and he was running. He was in charge of the ring crew because he was an established performer there, and he was wearing Zubaz pants with a Gold's Gym tank top with a bandana on his head and Chuck Taylor sneakers and a fanny pack. And I looked at him and I said, "This guy looks like me and all my friends in California when we were wrestling, the ones that we really broke out and got on the road because we did some long drives out there." Um, and I had a hunch, I had a feeling. I was like, "This is someone who might have similar goals." We started talking, and before I knew it, it was me and Rip and ZPB sort of became like our little running crew together. And ZPB for a time had moved up to Canada, so he was sort of doing his own thing. And so it just became me and Rip running around making towns all over the place. Now ZPB's back, so it's all sort of we're all kind of taking turns in the car together,
Yeah.
depending on who's where.
He looks good.
Um,
He doesn't drink as much.
Oh, he looks fantastic. And honestly, not many people will know this about ZPB. He was my very first match in front of an audience.
Oh wow.
The first time I wrestled a singles match in front of an audience, my opponent was ZPB, at the time known as Zach Static.
And
Um,
what promotion was that for?
oh gosh, I mean it would have been 2008. I don't believe they exist anymore. They were, I want to say they were called like WCWF. It was some letter soup
Yeah,
of
yeah,
all the
yeah.
normal
Like
letters.
the
And it was in Connecticut, and the typical indie show in 2008. It was in Connecticut. It was in a high school gym. There was probably 60 people there, if that.
yeah,
Kind of
like
the normal thing you would expect, but we had a lot of fun, and I always really liked him. And now I'm back, and he's built different too. He's put on some muscle mass that he didn't have when I first met him. When I first met him, he was very, very thin.
no,
Um,
definitely, and he's another one that just becomes like he became a powerhouse. Wrestler, someone like Hercules back in the day, or someone like there was this like I said, well built. And you look forward to these kind of matches. I remember one with Ribbon like Big Beef out in Limitless, and there was this two hard hitting dudes just wailing like I was like, this is wrestling. For me, wrestling was, growing up was always about these bigger, larger than life characters. People that that you wouldn't probably bump into, at your local store that would be suited just for wrestling, or at certain times they might have been, voodoo priests, gas, craftsmen, or whatever other gimmicks they were running. But these guys were made for wrestling, especially when I, were really young. Like people like King Kong Bundy. I wouldn't think he would be, working, wherever he worked, or George the Animal Steel. I had no idea he'd be a school teacher. Like I really thought these guys were just made for wrestling. And seeing people big like that, it just brings it back to that time, because now wrestling is so much more inclusive. There's so many different body types in wrestling that's okay with, because it's wrestling, and it still is wrestling, and it doesn't have to be so chiseled as it used to be.
and wrestling as a whole has benefited from that because now we get this variety of styles, and you can have someone who's this size against someone this size. And you get people coming into different characters with different perspectives. Maybe they identify a different way, or they had a different life when they were growing up. All that life experience kind of comes together, and you end up with new characters and new ideas within wrestling that we wouldn't have had. And that's
No, we
so
wouldn't.
cool.
When I grew up and growing up, I wanted to be a wrestler. Of course, seeing guys and girls on TV, I knew, well, I'm not that size, but I started ECW, came around. I was like, maybe I'd give it a shot. And I went to the school, and the dude was just like, dude, you're 5'8", 145 pounds. You're not going to be a pro wrestler. I'm not even going to take your money. Like, And for me, it was like, okay, I get it. I understand it. There's nothing I can do about that. I can't grow my height. But now, you fast forward and you got people, my height fight. You got people like BRG. You got all these different guys that are very athletic. They just don't got that height, but they can. It still works. Where before it looked I don't know, just everybody was so much bigger that it looked not proportionally correct. But today, it just everybody looks. It blends in nicely. Even when it goes against someone like a Brian Cage or someone that's really really built, it still looks fine.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's again, that's kind of what's cool is there's room for all types and all builds now. And again, it opens up possibilities we didn't have before, moves that happen in the ring, stories that are told that we couldn't have had. There's something that's going to happen in a match between Dark Sheik and someone like a Shane Mercer, right? There's something that'll happen in that match that you never would have been able to see in a match between Legion of Doom and the Natural Disasters. You need that variety of sizes and shapes and abilities. And it really, I really think that it's one of the reasons that matches from the last 10 years, I think they hold up better than some of the matches from 20, 30 years ago.
In a lot of ways, I would have to agree on an athletic point of view because
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
wrestling has become more with this inclusion has become more realistic because now hey, I might see this so and so, hey, down here, but guess what? He's also a wrestler. Same way you would look at a basketball player. Hey, I might see him walking down the street, but I wouldn't want to play him in basketball. It's kind of like that where the matches maybe 30 years ago, the athleticism wasn't always there. It was always like entertainment first, a lot of
Mm.
slapstick, a lot of stuff incorporated. But if you go back, it was very simple move sets that were, 8 or 9, 10 moves tops in some of these matches. And a lot of it was just hype and crowd motivation. Things like Ultimate Warrior today probably wouldn't fly. The crowd, fans, they would be like, that's it. Where back then it was just enough. People were so amped.
Yeah, I think you could make a similar argument about like a Goldberg. If you brought him in today, brand new, first time ever, and tried to give him that same run, I think 5, 6 weeks in, you'd have people just super over it,
They'd be like,
looking for something different.
yeah, especially at the rate that he was, beating people. It's not, like Roman once every couple of months or twice, he was going every week through people. But we ate it up at that point. We loved it. And we would wait every week. Who's Goldberg going to beat? Is someone going to beat Goldberg? Will this streak ever end? And now I think today the fans are like, when will this end? When will it end? Help for the end. Nobody's happy as a fan, and part of it's the internet. Part of it's just wrestling's wrestling, and it is. People have gotten a lot closer to the sport. Between I personally don't like to break all the kayfabe. That's why, I said tomahawk slat. I make it different people. I like to
Yeah,
play
yeah.
more wrestling. But there is a lot of people that, just take wrestling again as a sport. And then, there's others that go even further with it and really break down what's behind the curtains. And some of the fans get a hold of portions of that or pieces of that. And then they get behind the industry and they think, well, now I'm a professional in this knowledge. And they think they can now book, a show for millions of people. And it's like, you don't understand how masses have to, be afraid. It's not about, there's 5 or 6 fans in the demo. It's about the overall demographic. And these companies' demographics are so large that you can't even fathom it.
Yeah, I think from a performer's standpoint, I always I look at kayfabe in 2024 in a very specific way. I think you can't treat the fans like they're idiots, but you also can't ruin the show for them. So, no one's gonna be happy if Robert Downey Jr. starts going around telling everyone, "No, I am Iron Man." Everyone's going to be insulted by that because we know he's not Iron Man. We know he's an actor. But if in the middle of the movie he looked into the camera and said, geez, I don't know if I'm being paid enough for this. I'd really like to be taking a nap right now. I guess I got another line coming up. you know, that would ruin the movie. So during the performance, absolutely kayfabe all you want, right? But at the merch table, when you're just two people talking, or like even just on this podcast, maybe you don't have to try to pretend everything's 100% real, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and that is it. I mean, it all, like I said, depends on the demo. I mean, sometimes, these shows are geared towards kids. And as a kid, obviously, you want to believe 100%. Kids aren't gonna, they don't care about all the backstage stuff. They just want to see what's happening in front. As a kid, we were very lucky. We didn't have no internet. We didn't know anything. We just saw it on TV, and for most of the life, we thought it was real, or half script. We didn't know until documentaries started coming out, and people. I think Beyond the Mat was like the first one that really started to really break down the science of things for people and be like, "Hey, this part is this and this part is that." But at the same time, that's what got a lot of us into saying, "Hey, we kind of want to get into this." Maybe it's not as hard as we think. Maybe we don't gotta be that Michael Jordan athlete. Maybe we just have to be athletic. You know, and it got a lot of us wanting to do it. But again, there was nobody in the friend circle that was any bigger than 5'9". Everybody was short, and at that time, 2000s, Brock Lesnar was just debuting and going, making his rounds. People wanted these big, larger than life still characters in wrestling. And that's what, unfortunately, the indie scene a lot of the time will follow what the major, wrestling promotions are doing. And at that time, that's what was in. That's what people wanted, big, huge dudes. Again, now you fast forward the time clock, it's not so much about, the mass, it's more about the health. What's behind that mass, the slow, gradual build, someone like if you look at it, you've grilled, great muscle mass over the last, 7 years or so. You've really, but you've done it gradually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's coming from, yeah, I'm a bit older than some of the wrestlers that are on the shows now. Tends to be that most of the shows I'm on, if I'm not the oldest guy on the show, I'm the second or third oldest guy on the show. So muscle mass will come on a little slower for me. I also I'm a lifelong straight edge, and as a result, I don't get to take some of the shortcuts that some other folks get to take putting on their muscle mass. So for me, it's just protein, lifting, a diet, and hopefully some pretty decent genetics.
But yeah, but with that, kind of not taking the shortcuts, it kind of leaves the mass kind of there to kind of stay a little bit longer too. And it's a little bit more forgiving. Where taking some of those shortcuts and you start missing some of them, it's like, oh shoot, there goes my mass. And it's like all sorts of disasters can happen. But it is something that's impressive, even at whatever age, to transform yourself. It's not easy. It's not something that is easy to do as much as you want to. It still takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, yeah, and when the world shut down a few years ago, I had already done a lot of the work to get in really good shape. The job I was at, I had free access to their gym. I worked at the time for a college nearby. So I was able to go to the gym every day, and I had gotten very routine with my diet. And then when the world shut down, I was lucky enough that my wife and I had bought a house about a year earlier and hadn't really done anything with the basement. And it's a nice tall basement, which at my height is pretty important. And I was able to just through free stuff on Facebook Marketplace and a couple hand-me-down pieces of equipment that Rip was getting rid of. I was able to build out a really good basement gym, and that made that first call it 6, 7 months of the shutdown probably physically the most productive period in my life in terms of working out and getting in shape. When if you look at clips from right before that, if you look at clips from like February 2020,
Yep.
and you see me, it's like, oh yeah, he's in pretty good shape, but a lot of that is the fake tan and just being tall. But he's in good shape. And then if you look at the season 2 of Limitless Wrestling's The Road, which were tapings
Yeah.
that were done in September of 2020, where we had closed studio tapings done under really carefully orchestrated conditions. That was probably when I was at my height during that. And you watch that and it's like, whoa,
Oh, I
what's Perry
remember.
been
I
up
was like,
to?
I looked at that. I was like, is that Perry Von Vicious? Like, you were looking just like Sid there. You were huge, honestly. And that's the funny thing. Wrestling for fans were kind of just dead. Right. And as for wrestlers, it was dead, especially up here. There was nothing going on there. If you didn't have access to the gym, you weren't working out if you didn't have nothing at home. Everything was closed. This left some to be unmotivated, left others to just, be creative. I saw people making, gyms out of whatever they could find, and some had scrap metal gyms, and others, were doing laps around their house, and people were just making do. But when those tapings started, it was like, ooh, a hope, fresh light. Beyond started doing tapings. Limitless started first. It was, I think, Pandemic at the Dojo. Then they started The Road. Then soon after that, NCW would start doing tapings, and so would Chaotic. And fans were like, at least I wasn't, and the people that I was talking to, I was very happy about that, because we all had we had platforms to watch indie wrestling. We had YouTube and stuff, and people could kind of watch it on these premieres. Premieres were kind of just taking off then.
Yep.
So everybody was able to at least get to somewhat be together to watch this.
Yeah.
And then the wrestlers would show up, and they would sometimes say, funny things, or they would bicker amongst each other, or they would critique their own match. So you were getting these interactions with the wrestlers. And that's what really, kind of made me want to do more podcasting. I was getting to see these interactions, and I was always thinking about it, because, I would go to these shows, and not for nothing, indie wrestling, a lot of the times there's nothing, different than a good indie match than there is on main, WWE match, except for just production, just money and production. The match itself most of the time is, better. Sometimes the storyline is better. But the other thing that's missing is eyes and ears on that scene. There's nobody, watching it. You can't fill these VFW halls tight enough to get the same crowds. So I wanted to do something that would also get eyes and ears on the scene. And, I just figured, hey, why not just, start interviewing wrestlers. And at that point, I was able to, kind of recap shows, and they would release matches. So I was able to preview shows every week. And it was a nice little platform for that. But, finally we would see, I think in around March, I think at 21, or it had to be around March, I think Beyond started coming back. They did their first live show, and then everybody just kind of opened up and blossomed. But
I remember April of 2021 was my first show back in front of people, and it was great. It was great to have that back, because boy, having been someone who's performed regularly pretty much every week of my adult life. I mean, since getting out of college, I started wrestling, and at that point, I think it was 13 years around then. I'm at 16 years now, so however that math adds up, it was around 13 years. So for 13 years, it had been a weekly thing for me, multiple times a week, and to then have it all of a sudden just go away was so weird. I mean, it was probably 3 or 4 weeks before I was even out of denial about it, I still had my gear bag packed, and knowing full well that there weren't shows for a long time. And I just still my stuff was ready to go. And in my head, it was just always oh yeah, no, I probably have something coming. And I would look at my calendar and go, oh, right, there's nothing. It was just so bizarre.
it was weird. It was the weirdest thing, because I went to that. It was the season opener of 2020 NCW, and I remember them. I went to a couple shows prior to that in the earlier in the year, but that was my last show that I went to, and I was going there, and people were talking about it, and they weren't sure what was going to happen. And someone was saying, "Well, he might be shutting things down." We don't really know. Nobody knew anything. 3 weeks
Yeah.
prior to that, people were just on the internet making jokes, and after that, all of a sudden things are starting to get serious. First cases showing up in U.S. Oh, Boston got hit hard. Nobody knows what to do. And I just remember that being the show. And then there was supposed to be a show the next day, and that was just canceled. And people were just sitting, okay, a week went by, 3 weeks went by, a month goes by, like, oh, this is a little bit longer than we're thinking. Okay. Mania gets canceled. Oh, shoot. Now we got everybody sitting home that had these bookings. Wow, this got to be really serious. Florida's not running Mania. WWE is not letting fans go. They're losing that money. What do something's wrong here. Um, and then all of a sudden it just kept going, and it's like, okay, this is, everybody's in it for the long haul here. And like you said, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Some, home gym, some just kind of said the hell with it. Others, worked on their character. I've seen people blossom tremendously out of it. They took and they did tremendous character work and just really redefined who they were and came out of, the pandemic shining, with platforms like The Road and like behind closed doors, great foundations for people to, at that time to kind of use what they learned during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the my evolution into the human monster truck came out of that entirely. I was, we were all stuck at home, and that meant that a lot of my normal, like, when gift giving occasions come up, family would always know, like, oh, does Perry need does he need a gift card for gas for getting the shows? Does he need new travel gear? That was always sort of the thing for years, was just, oh, how's your luggage? How's your this? How's your that? And because that wasn't going to be the thing, my birthday came up in July of that year, and it was like I didn't even know what to ask for. I was just at a loss. And my wife, who's brilliant and pays great attention and always is very creative with gifts, got me a couple of the monster truck toys from the 80s that I had mentioned that I had when I was a kid, but that now I'm not gonna chase them down on eBay or whatever. She found some on Facebook Marketplace and got me those. And I was like, oh, no way. I hadn't even thought about how badly I wanted these. And now that I'm stuck at home, maybe I'll start collecting some of them. So I did. And I, started sharing some of them like online when I had them and stuff, and got a pretty good reaction from people. And then, we're all stuck at home. The best thing we can do for wrestling is like be silly on the internet. And so one day, just being being silly, I tweeted out, "I'm Perry Von Vicious. I'm a human monster truck," and that was it. It was like maybe I had heard like some like Road Warriors promo where they were being crazy like that. That sounds like something crazy they would say. And so I just tweeted that, and I got like 7 or 8 DMs from friends within wrestling, just saying like, "Dude, keep that. That's so good. You got to keep that." And I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll do something with that. And I changed my display name on Twitter to the Human Monster Truck, and that was really all I did with it. I didn't really think much more about it. And then again, one of those first shows back up at Limitless, Danhausen was there, and he and I were talking about character development and merch and online, what we do online. And I mentioned the monster truck thing in passing, and I was like, I've kind of been debating doing something with that. And his eyes lit up, and he goes, "That would move some merch. That's great." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I'll figure something out." And then again, my wife, being great at giving gifts, got me a 3D printer, and I hadn't even thought about learning 3D printing really. Like, she knew I was like into like toy making, like I would do like molds and just for
Yeah.
my collection. And so Yeah, she bought me that, and within 3 days of when I got it, it went from a pile of parts to a built printer to I was test printing my first monster truck I'd designed because I just was immediately obsessed. And that, of course, led to some, the monster truck toys that I sold and the action figures now. And the character just kind of became very obvious to me, where it wasn't, oh, I'm not like a monster truck driver. I'm not this other thing. It's literally just I'm a wrestler who embodies what's awesome about monster trucks.
Yeah, yeah. I got one of your shirts. I think it was one of the earliest shirts. You're like in green, and you're green. And you're actually green. It's like you're probably like the monster. It's a great shirt.
Yeah.
And I remember, seeing the whole gimmick, and I remember, seeing the monster trucks and as merch, and it's been like, wow, that's awesome. Because again, 2020 did a lot of things, and one of it did, was get people into collecting stuff. Because what are we doing every weekend, right? We're not going to wrestling shows anymore. We're not going here, there, and everywhere. We're sitting home. We're sitting on eBay. I started wrestling figure collecting again. I started monster truck figure collecting again. And me and my kid were playing it. And I probably bought every Monster Jam toy that was released in 2020 and all the special editions. I got bins and bins of them. I don't even think my kid likes them anymore. But they're there. They're all in display. It was wild. I'm buying figures. I'm buying old figures, things that I had as a kid. 'Cause, back in 2010, we had a house fire. So I lost all my childhood toys, everything that I had. And, a lot of them was like wrestling figures, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters and stuff. But, the wrestlers I was always really just upset about. And I'm seeing people post their Hasbros and LGNs, and I'm like, oh, I don't have any of these anymore. It's like, so I went back, I bought some of the ones used that I wanted and I had as a kid, and made me feel all nostalgic. Yep, like that, just like that.
Yeah, I'm always surrounded by them. I have the Perry Hasbro.
Is he your real uncle?
No, no. And in fact, he and I have never technically met. I did get to see him wrestle one time. It would have been around 2011, 2010, something like that. I was back visiting family, and there was a big time wrestling show going on near where my wife's family lives. And I think Billy King or someone like that was like, yeah, I can get you in. So I went in for free, not even knowing what the card was. And one of the matches was Uncle Sid against Too Cold Scorpio.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So I did get to see him wrestle one time.
He's on.
But
When I first laid eyes, he was Sid Justice. He came into WWE. He was kind of this, friendly, good guy, kind of on par with Hogan. He was buddy buddy, and then all of a sudden, the whole thing of the Royal Rumble happened. I was all pumped because this dude, nobody's really had pushed Hogan. They've been bad guys, but no one's been like on the good side. In a long time, not since like Savage really had really tested him. And so I was really pumped for that. And then, he would, again, come back later as Psycho Sid, and that character was just, brilliant. The theme song, everything about it, and just, I was just looking forward to those promos, and it would just amp you up. But I tell you, the similarities are there though, because you have that kind of powerhouse of wrestling. You do deliver, a really nice power.
thank you. Yeah. I'm very happy with it. It's funny. I didn't throw my first power bomb in a wrestling ring until probably 2018. So I was a decade in the first time I did a power bomb in the ring. Like, I'd been taught how to do one, but it had been 10 years earlier. And I just remember like everyone was doing one of two power bombs. They were either doing the sit out or they were doing that sort of like snap, really like drive them down. You would see like Eddie Guerrero, Benoit, that whole crew all had that snapping power bomb. And I was like, why does no one do a power bomb the way a big guy does? The way Nash, the way Sid, the way Mike Awesome did it. They'd get them up and they would launch them, and you'd watch them in the air as they came. It was like hang time. And to me, that was so much cooler.
Yeah,
And
I
so
used
I
to
said,
love like when like he came into Diesel, the jackknife. It was just, but he would get air off going up, like you said. You'd almost launch him up in the air to bring him back down, and it was very devastating.
yeah,
Especially because they
if
were
you,
being done by these, 6, 7 foot people. It's like you got some height up there, you're going down.
yeah, like it's funny at most indie shows, I'm one of the taller guys at 6'3". But next to Uncle Sid or Kevin Nash, of course, I'm 6, 7 inches shorter than they are.
And then that's what it is. Though, like I was, but like I feel like I mean, big men in wrestling kind of almost got lost in translation just because some of the big men want to do more athletic things. They don't want to just be known as a big man. They want to be able to jump the ropes. They want to be able to do all this. Where back in the day, you didn't have anybody in that division go off the top. Nobody even did. You'd get them off the second, but nobody went off the top.
It was really interesting. The only one I can think of that would come off the top from back in the day was Undertaker when he would do the rope walk, and that was a real
Yeah,
specific situation. The other guys, though, I love the reason that they didn't do it. It wasn't, people want to say, oh, it's psychology. You want to keep that mystique that you're huge, and it wasn't that at all. It was the fact that if you look at Sid, you look at Kevin Nash, they had one concern in pro wrestling ever, and it was making as much money as possible. And for them, the money wasn't in flying. The money wasn't in having an athletic match. The money was in being this huge persona in the ring. So they would go in and they wouldn't stress their bodies. If they got hurt, that meant they couldn't wrestle and that meant they wouldn't make money. So they did so much less to make sure that they would make more money. Sid had softball matches to get to. He couldn't be hurt getting hurt. And Kev, I mean, I don't think it's been said time and again, but he and Scott Hall changed everything about how business is done for performers in this industry. And I think if Kevin Nash grew up 6'1", maybe that doesn't happen.
no, it wouldn't. It really wouldn't. It wouldn't be there because there was no market for that. Then in that time era, it was we're lucky to have HBK, honestly. And at the time, HBK wasn't a world champion. He was a intercontinental champion. You had a big differential. That's the big difference in today's wrestling on TV. Everybody's kind of everywhere. There was kind of some strict lines of, who was IC champion and who was actually, world heavyweight champion. And very rarely you would see guys cross over, only very few, like Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage. They would bounce from IC to there. Bret Hart would move up the ranks and Shawn Michaels. But Shawn Michaels wasn't a super tall guy.
I mean, and that same can be said of Randy Savage and of Bret Hart. They weren't monstrous huge guys, and I mean, Warrior was tall, but that wasn't his defining characteristic. He had an action figure body. He was insane looking, and that's what did it for him. But it's great. Again, like you say, it's the evolution of wrestling. We watched this era where your size sort of determined what level of success you could achieve, and now we're seeing where no, really, now it comes down to, are you good, and not just good bell to bell, like, oh yeah, I can be super athletic, but like, are you athletic? Do you have a character? Do you just have a crazy connection with an audience where they love what you do? You see it all the time. And it's great because it means that different people with different strengths really have a fair shot.
It does. And it also gives people that might not have, like I said, the whole package kind of be able to maneuver what they do have that's good and use it. And you could be the best wrestler in the whole wide world, like you said, bell to bell. But if you don't have any charisma, you're not doing any of the things, you're not socializing on social media, you're not doing anything, you might not have quite a following at all. You might be considered boring, you might not be considered a draw, you might just be considered mediocre. All these other things now in the world of wrestling plays big effect. They want to see character definition. They want to see characters that, draw you in. Do I want to see this guy every month? Am I going to really want to see him wrestle? What storyline is he in? We're getting, TV quality storylines in indie scene. We have these matches that will go on 2, 3, 4 weeks. The Road was a perfect example. We got to see great things like Love Doug and Ava Everett going at it. And it kind of progressed into, when the shows came back, to these long drawn out storylines. And the fans reciprocated well, but that's because it is that total package. You can't have one without, the other. And that's what defines you as a champion. You've seen some champions, they get to the top and then fans are like, you're okay, but not as the champion. No, we like it the other way. We like you going for the title, not actually on top. And, it's just the way it works. And it's how they, the mannerisms and how they present themselves as champion too. But, you've been champion before, you're champion now.
That's true. Yeah, I just won my first singles championship in a few years up in Maine for Maine Premier Wrestling. I won their heavyweight championship, the inaugural champion, the first champion, because it was their debut show. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And I've held belts other places, and it's absolutely true that there's a huge difference between a character that they love to see chase for a championship versus a character they want to see have a championship. Finding a way to be both, I think, is a complicated challenge, and one that I'm happy to say a number of times I've been pretty successful at. As far as this particular time, we'll see. My first defense is April 19th up in Maine. So we'll see how the crowd likes me on their second viewing.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I talked to some of the people out there, and like I said, they said it was a great show and a fun time. Hoping to get out to this one. I don't think I have anything this time. Last time I was just totally booked solid. But I want to go back a little bit. After that pandemic kind of ended and opened up, you really kind of took off everywhere. I saw you. You went out to Texas for a little bit. How was that? How was going down south?
I love it. It's crazy. Since coming back to the East Coast in general, pandemic or before or after, the amount of travel's been crazy. I've done Texas, trips down to Tennessee, down to Delaware, every state in New England, Chicago, Nova Scotia up in Canada, New Brunswick up in Canada. And one of the things I love about doing that is when you first see a new audience and they first see you, it's sort of both halves are feeling it out, right? Like I'm sort of trying to figure out when I went down to Texas and I did we were there for heavy metal wrestling and for Sabotage, trying to see like, oh, are they going to be into me, or did they like the other guy because he's local, even though he's your heel and I'm your baby face? They know him, so are they going to turn on me? Is this like a north versus south thing? Are they not going to like me because I'm from Massachusetts and this is Texas? That's never really been the case. They've always kind of liked me, and especially now with the monster truck character. It's a story I love talking about because again, this character has been fantastic for merch, which is a great way to interact with audiences. I went down with a huge tub full of T-shirts and stickers and 8x10s and 3D printed toys when we went to Tennessee, and I came back with an empty Tupperware. Just everything went, and it was like 2 or 3 shows. It was a short weekend. Everything was gone, and the rest of the crew that went with me didn't actually move that much merch, even though the people were arguably more notable than I am. We had Travis Huckabee with us. Delmy was in the car. Rip was in the car, and I just sold out of everything. And they were all kind of saying like, "Wow, how do you do it?" And I was like, "Well, go figure. The South likes monster trucks. It's
Well,
not."
that's the thing. Who doesn't like a monster truck? Okay, first of all, any kid that's at the show wants a monster truck. Okay, they all love monster trucks. And then Like 90% of the dads loved monster trucks as a kid. They'll see the toy and be like, hey, I used to have those. Let me buy it right now. So either way, you kind of win. The monster truck is just gold. People love monster trucks. I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing a huge monster truck just go over a line of cars and just crush everything. Um, I grew up loving Monster Jim and loving cars like Gravedigger and Bigfoot, and seeing these, people come. And like I said, when pandemic hit, like I said, we were shopping one day and my son was like, "Oh, look, they have this one." And I was like, "Oh, I used to, have a Gravedigger figure." And I ended up buying one, and one turned to two, and then two turned to that series, and the series turned into more series. And then the wrestling figures, like I said, the new ones, old ones, and never mind the merch, the shirts, the t-shirts. During the pandemic, one thing I did when everybody was kind of home was I would just, I felt bad because I get it. People might have had a job. They might have been, have a regular job. I understand wrestling isn't everybody's primary career. But at the same point, a lot of people were out of their regular job too in 2020. If you weren't, deemed, whatever, you weren't working. So a lot of people were just sitting home looking for ways to make money. And the only other way they could do it was merch. But, it's hard to sell merch if you're not at a show, right?
Yeah.
So yes, back in 2020, a lot of people, like I said, so you can't sell merch at shows. Now, how do you do it? So I was doing random drawings, and I'd say, if you have, a pro wrestling T-shirt, or you have a T-shirt, online for link, post it, and I'd make a post, and people would just do it. And I'd randomly just, start drawing a shirt. It started off once a week, then I was doing twice a week, and I was doing daily sometimes because the pro wrestling tees would have a sale, so you might as well get 5 shirts during sale time or 10 shirts during sale time than doing them by the week. So I just buy them all in bulk. I do own every Vern Vicalo shirt. I own a lot of shirts. A whole dresser full. But that was my thing. That's the way I wanted to show support was buying shirts. Because it was something I needed. I needed shirts. I had a lot of pants during 2020. I actually lived in Zubaz. I bought myself 5 or 6 pairs, maybe 7 actually, because WWE had a bunch. They were doing this like cross promotion with Zubaz where they had like different superstars. So I ended up getting Hogan's, Macho Man's, Razor Ramon's. I got bunch of them. And then I went to Zubaz's official site and bought a bunch because they were so comfortable. So I lived in them for probably 2020 from the pandemic to probably about mid 23. I just stayed in Zubaz. They were comfortable.
I love that. I'm going to derail us for just a second here, talking about our wardrobes getting pared down or changed up from the pandemic, because I got stuff to say about this. So I went to full work from home with my day job at the time, where I was working for like I said, working for a fairly notable all women's college in Western Mass. I think most people can probably piece together what college that is because there's only one like that out here. Um, and it was great. They were fantastic. They went full remote. It was honestly kind of a dream gig because I was very good at that job, which meant that an 8-hour job suddenly became like a 4-hour job every day that I was still getting paid for because I was just good at the work. I would get it all done and then have a bunch of free time so I could work out or whatever. But it meant that like I used to dress up real nice. It wasn't required, but I dressed up nice going to that job anyway because it felt right. I didn't have to do that anymore. I could wear t-shirts on Zoom calls and no one cared because everyone else was. And I wore, gym shorts most of the time that whole year because no one ever saw what I was wearing. And it was awesome. It was the best. And all of my nice clothes, when the world came back and they started opening back up and they were going to bring us back to the office, I accepted a different job somewhere else that was fully remote forever. I stayed there for about a year before I left because I got the Japan contract and went. And now I'm a full time wrestler. It's what I do. I don't do anything else.
That's
And
great.
that meant,
I mean,
yeah, oh, it's amazing. It took me a long time to get here, but I'm happy to be here. I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm gonna ride it as long as I can. But all my dress clothes went in a Tupperware, went in the basement, and I haven't touched them since 2020, and that rules so hard. I think I'm at like three pairs of jeans that I have that I just wear for when I'm doing like work around the house or in the workshop. And other than that, it's Zubas, it's sweats, it's gym shorts because why would I wear anything else? And it's awesome.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, I unfortunately the Zubas kind of the knees started to tear, and I was gonna buy all new ones, and the wife was like, "No more Zubas, please. You've had them." And I was like, "But they have other colors. I'll just switch the colors." She's like, "No, just wear some jeans, wear some normal clothes, please. No more of this." And I'm like, "But they know me as that, and I go to shows wearing it, and people are all excited because I actually wear them on a daily basis. You don't understand." I was like, the wrestlers, they only get to wear these when they, wrestle at the show. I'm wearing them Monday through Sunday. They're looking at me like, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, no, get rid of them all. I'm like, really? But, I do home health care. And, a scrub isn't so much different from a Zubaz, but they're comfortable. They're very comfortable. Um, and I do it for family, but yeah, that's the thing, and I'm happy to hear though that you were able to make that happen, because I remember there was a point in time, and I was watching you run through social media. You were traveling, you were doing the rounds, you were going here and there, and then I caught a glimpse of you on Wrestling Open. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Perry's on IWTV. I know you were already on, like the road and stuff, but it felt different. Because, beyond the Limitless, I think are the two top promotions in New England, but Beyond this has this prestige about it. They've had some great talent. They have a great crowd. When I saw you on, I was like, wow. And at the same time, I think Rip had started his promotion. He was running with that, and that was a huge success too. I remember that going on. But I saw you on TV. I was like, wow, this is great. I'm seeing people that I was seeing. Again, a couple of years before, in a money suit in the VFW. Now you're in front of an even more lively crowd, different character, really just killing it.
Yeah, it's crazy how wrestling works that way. People that you get used to seeing in politely what I would describe as a smaller situation. All of a sudden they're on a big stage, it's crazy because yeah, I mean honestly like watching AEW now, like a third of the roster are people that I've wrestled with, sometimes on really small shows. And now knowing like this is where they are. Oh, that's so awesome. I mean, one of my oldest friends in wrestling, who I trained with in California. I hate doing the name drops, especially on podcasts, but I'll do it anyway. Bailey is someone that I was really close with in California. We trained at the same school. We were on all the same shows, and now she's one of the biggest stars in pro wrestling and has been for years. And it's awesome.
It's amazing, and it's amazing, and you see, you see it even here locally. Like, I mean, look at like Sasha Banks Day. She just came back to AEW. She just showed up at the chaotic, the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, helping people train. Like, it's awesome to see people on platforms, and it's great on the indie scene to see people grow. And I feel like now is a better time than ever, where you don't have to wait decades for people to move along. They're just there. It's kind of like weeks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and we keep making reference back to the pandemic, and I think a great example is how many people are big stars, big characters, mainstays of the indie realm right now that we'd never seen before the pandemic. They're stars that came out of the pandemic. I mean, you look at like we'd seen a little bit of Love Doug before the pandemic, but not that much. We've
Nope.
seen a little bit of Becca before the pandemic, but not that much.
No, she's like my number, like one of the people that I really, I saw her on, that NCW show right before the world closed. She came down, for me, it was the first time seeing her wrestle. She came out as basic Becca. She looked as though there was, an eighties gymnast in the house,
Yeah.
and then I watched her online kind of just evolve, and she became all of a sudden pop star Becca, and look at her now. She's just evolved so much. And I love seeing same thing with Love Doug. He's another one that just grew from it. And these are people that I commend because they took advantage of the pandemic to work on that character. They defined themselves to really hone in on fans, interacting with them, getting them involved. Becca was great at doing that. She did all sorts of stuff on the road. And same thing with Love Dog. He got fans behind him, got fans in front of him. He was another great character. And there's been so many of them, and it's just great to see. Because, like I said, it isn't years. It's very soon. And the people that we're seeing today, in a month, could be on AEW. They might not be signed, but you'll start to see them, and that just means that now they're going to start to get national exposure. Other promoters from other companies around the country are going to see them. People are going to notice them. People are going to start following them on social media. They're going to get boosts at shows. Now they can say, "Hey, it was on AEW." This is all great stuff in the indie scene. Because now it's everybody's getting a bigger platform.
Absolutely. And again, I think the way that we can watch the landscape of the indies change so rapidly is both it's partly a sign of just where wrestling is presently, and it's great the way that that's changed. But another big part of it is just you see the caliber of young indie talent who have come around, and it's crazy. When you see an Alec Price, a Channing Thomas, Rip Bison, Delmy Exo, when you see all these different indie performers kind of start here somewhere and they jump to here, and all of a sudden they're untouchably good and undeniably good, to the point where they're absolutely, being recognized as being incredibly important to shows. They're main eventers, they're champions. You know, it's just wild to watch that happen.
It really is. It really is. All those names, and then these are all people that I've seen just, really just push the envelope, taking it to the next level. Channing's another one. Him and Bacabella. He's, defined himself so many times. From natural, and now he's world class. And he's another one that's just kind of exploded on the scene. He's getting out there. He's going to Germany. He's getting out of the country. And it's great to see all these people getting out there. I remember. Another fine example is Anthony Green. I mean, I've seen him, wrestle, referee, wrestle. I mean, he's done it all, and he's progressed to the point of, WWE, came back, AEW, Japan. He's another one, doing it full time. And that progression is there, always evolving, always soaking things in, not really staying stagnant. And I see the same progression in you. I see the same progression in Rip. It's not this stagnation. Every time I've seen him in Limitless, and every time I've seen you in NCW, or wherever you've shown up now recently, there's always a little bit something added. There's always a little bit something new. There's always a little bit something to watch. But then there's always the familiar too. We can depend on seeing, Perry wrestle, but we also get to see something new. And having that reliability is also important, because you want to be known, to have a certain standard. Well, every time I see him wrestle, I'm going to get to see this, and then throwing in the bonuses, But after all that, how did Japan transpire? How did you get noticed by them?
So a lot of that came, you mentioned Rip having a promotion, Pro Wrestling Grind, who are currently on a brief hiatus until I think the end of summer. They're coming back because Rip has some more obligations and return trips to Japan. So, it's hard to run a promotion when you're on the other side of the planet.
Oh yeah.
But it was really that, we when the promotion first started, we played host to the Saito brothers, who are two trainees of Tajiri's. And now they're the All Japan Tag Champions, and they're everywhere in Japan. But they were out here for some 6 months or so. They were staying with Jay Freddy in New York, and they would train with him, and they would come out and they would wrestle for Grind, and they would lift in the Dungeon over at Rip's place. And because they were on the shows and we were playing host to them, Tajiri, along with the powers that be at Kyushu Pro Wrestling in Fukuoka, were watching the grind shows when they would come out. And I started to notice it because all of a sudden Tajiri followed me on Twitter, which that'll raise an eyebrow all of a sudden. Like, where'd that come from? And then he's liking my posts. And I was like, oh, he's actually like he did that wasn't like a polite who is this guy follow. That was a I want to watch what Perry's doing follow. That's neat. And all of a sudden we were in talks with Chikuzan, who's the owner over at Kyushu Pro, and settling on prices and dates and flights. And yeah, I think it was, gosh, it would have been our talks with them would have started January of 2023, and it would have been about this time last year, mid late March, when we settled on our official dates and signed our contracts. And yeah, then it was just a waiting game, waiting until September when we flew over. So yeah, it all happened very fast. I think our first contact with them was somewhere around like January 4th or 5th.
Wow. Wow. And then, you got the contract and I saw you guys go, I was like, wow, they made it. Because, I mean, that's been something in wrestling. I think that's been there ever since I was a kid. There's been this prestige about Japan in wrestling, whether you watch New Japan or not. I remember the olden days, of seeing people like Andre the Giant getting to wrestle in Japan, Hogan getting to wrestle in Japan. And boy, did he wrestle, actually, really physically wrestle. He had to put on a show there because the Japanese don't play in their wrestling. I feel they're much more stricter. They want what they want. It's a totally different ball game in some aspects.
Yeah.
Um, and you do also have that strong side, which is much more physical. But I feel like, and I remember talking with Rick, like he was like, that's kind of what he wanted for, when he was starting with grind, that he wanted that kind of style brought here. Because it's not oftenly used. There's a lot of, very athletic styles or lucha styles of that, but there's not really that authentic Japanese strong style kind of happening. And he was like, I want to bring that here. And like I said, when I saw you guys come over there, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So you get over there, was it a big cultural difference, or was it kind of just, very merged?
I mean, it's definitely different. It couldn't be a much more different place, but in a lot of great ways. I don't have I've only been able to think of one negative of my time in Japan, and it was just the time away from my wife. 3 months was a long stint to be away from my wife. But other than that, it was an incredible experience. You talk about some of the aura in pro wrestling about going to Japan. I had two very distinct experiences that happened while I was over there that were just sort of like stop you in your tracks and you need to soak it in. The first was the first day we walked into the dojo to train, and the rings in Japan have that specific look. They're not the same rings we use in America. They've got a different style of pad on the corners. The ropes are different. Even the actual structure underneath is different. And walking into the dojo and seeing that in person was just like sort of like, whoa, this is real experience. And that happened real fast. We'd been off the plane for about 13 hours when we arrived at our first training session. We
Wow.
landed at night and the next morning woke up and walked the mile and a half to the dojo to go train. Um, and so that was one. The other one was our last weekend there. Chikuzan, who it's Ryota Chikuzan is the owner. He's a legend in Japan. He's done everything. He's wrestled for every company, and he was originally a New Japan trainee when he was first starting. Wrestled there for a number of years. He took us to New Japan, It was the Global Tag League Finals. We got to go to the show. The Kyushu champion at the time, now Rip's tag partner over in Japan, Kodai Nozaki, who
Oh
lived with
wow.
us in the Kyushu house. He and Aso-san, who is an old legend who wrestles for Kyushu, they were both on the New Japan show. And they took us to the show. We had amazing seats. We sat with Tajiri and Chikuzan to watch the show, which
That's
is
amazing.
yeah, crazy, unreal experience. And at the end of the show, Chikuzan stands up and kind of looks at us and says, yeah, come with me." And we thought like, oh, he's gonna, we're taking off or whatever. It's time to go hop in the company van and head back. And we walked directly around the guardrail, along the stage, and back through the entryway while the like last match was having their goodbyes in the ring. We walked right through the New Japan entrance into the locker room. And it was cool because like there's some people that we know back there. Like I'm old friends with Jeff Cobb and a number of other folks who are on the show. So that part was kind of cool, seeing some people we knew. But then there were like the legends that we don't know. So like seeing Taka Michinoku back there hanging out, and like, just everyone who was there was crazy. And Chikuzan says, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. And around the corner comes Tanahashi
Oh
to come
wow.
out and meet us and talk with us. And we all took a big group picture together. And then like 5 days later, they announced that he was the new president of New Japan, which is insane that like 5 days prior, we got to meet him and hang out backstage. Uh, but yeah, the whole experience was incredible because we did, I think my final count was 17 matches, 17 or 18 matches in the course of the 13 weeks we were there, performing for audiences. I think the smallest show we did was a small charity event in front of some 300 kids at a school. And then we were also doing shows in front of 1,500, 2,000 people. Those were that was a pretty regular thing, which was incredible. And then we also got to watch other shows. I mentioned New Japan. We did get to see Noah while we were out there. Got to see AG. We went out to dinner with Anthony Green in Japan, which the first time I met him was a decade ago when he refereed one of my matches.
So I'm saying like the
And
progression is just incredible in New England, and even in wrestling in general. It doesn't matter where, but getting to see that progression is even more wilder because you're seeing it all just kind of unfold. And looking back, it's like wow, and but knowing that at the point these people, this is where they wanted to go. Like you wanted to be in Japan wrestling at some point in your career, and now you're here, and here you are. Now you said you're contracted by them. Is that like a long-term standing thing? So you're going to go back next year, or
so it's possible I'm back sometime this year. We're currently in negotiations because the contract was written as such that we can sort of renegotiate after the first visit. Um, Rip, before we even left Japan, Rip had talked to them and had set up his return dates. So he's there now.
yeah,
um,
yeah, I saw
and
that.
he'll be back in a few weeks. For me, it's a big question mark because again, I really don't want to be away from my wife for that long, and I'm able to support myself while I'm here. So
So you
it's a
got a good
little
workflow already right now with the indie scene locally, plus merch, plus
yeah,
everything. And you can't
yeah.
get the wife to go to Japan now.
Well, I could, but we have a whole homestead and chickens and cats, and it's
Yeah,
hard to
that's
leave
right. You
them
got
for
like
too
a
long.
farmstead over there. I've seen you. You got like the fresh eggs. You got everything going, all the healthy stuff. That's the good
Yeah.
stuff. But was it difficult working matches in Japan with the language barrier? Was that an issue?
Not really. I think it's something I actually talked a lot with AG about this when we were having dinner over there. Wrestling is such a universal language that when you're talking, before a show, when you're talking with an opponent or a tag partner about, what's going to happen when you're putting together a match, when you're performing on the fly and talking, however that works out, it's so universal because the names of the moves are all the same. Um, and I thankfully we got to know the roster there really well, to the point where we often wouldn't have to call stuff. Like, we could lock eyes with someone in our match, and we knew what was going to happen. Like, we knew, like, oh yeah, he's going to do this thing, then I'm going to do this thing.
So the
Okay,
chemistry
cool.
was
Like,
really, really good all around, which
and
makes it nice. And I've heard that from a few people about it being like a universal language and just you understand the match flow and what's happening, and people just kind of pick it up from there, and it can work multilingual, which is nice.
yeah, and
Um,
I will say, my experience in Japan, pretty much no matter where I went, whether I was going into a store, whether we were going to the movies, or if I was training at the dojo, being on a show, talking to fans at the merch table, everyone there speaks some English. And there's an old joke that my foreign language teacher in high school used to tell, because they would lament about how, in America we really only speak English. And the joke was, what do you call a person who speaks two languages? Bilingual. What do you call a person who speaks three languages? Trilingual. What do you call a person who speaks one language? American. And that was pretty, it was pretty true. It made me feel a little guilty that the only Japanese I knew was, sort of hello, goodbye, good morning, and thank you. By the end, I also knew a lot of the names of different foods, but other than that, everyone spoke enough English that I really didn't learn a whole lot of Japanese.
yeah, yeah. Did you happen to hit any of the Disney worlds out there?
I didn't. So we were in Fukuoka, which is the largest city on the island of Kyushu. Kyushu is the most southern island in Japan. And not most people don't realize, especially not in America, don't realize just how big Japan is. To get from where we were to Tokyo, where the Disney parks are, is about 14 hours by car,
Oh,
or 6 hours if you pay for the bullet train, which is more expensive than flying. Um, so initially, my plan was I was going to do it at the end of my stay. Like, they would have their date that I was going home. And rather than going home, I would go to the bullet train station, go up to Tokyo, do 2 days at Disney, and then fly home. And then it just, I'd been away from my wife for 3 months at that point, and Rip wasn't going to do Disney with me. He was just taking off to head home, and I figured, 2 days alone in a park where, I don't speak the language necessarily. I'll wait and do it another time. And it does look like my wife and I are probably going to Japan in the fall together to do Disney and some other stuff. So
that'll
I'll
be
get
fun.
there. I'll get there.
That would be a lot of fun. I know you're an avid Disney fan. I follow those films. My wife's a big Disney fan. I'm a Disney fan. I like it myself. It's a lot of magic, a lot of fun. I've seen you've done reviews. You've been to Florida. You've been to California. You've been to both plenty of times. And my wife follows all that because you do more than just wrestle. You write blogs. You do gaming now. And I've seen you do a bunch of different cool things.
Yeah, I try to, I'm a big nerd. I get obsessed with things, and I have a lot of interests that go beyond just wrestling. And it's one of the reasons that the human monster truck character is so easy to put together, because I had that interest. And between the 3D printing and the toy collecting and the actual monster trucks, that character was easy. And so then I realized, I was like, I think there's people who follow me for other stuff. So, when I take a Disney trip, I tweet about it, I post on Instagram, I record for the vlog. And then with the gaming, there's monster truck games, Disney games, Ninja Turtle games. There's so many things I could do that are so distinctly within the wheelhouse of stuff that I love. And people have a lot of fun. I get a lot of cool folks coming hanging out in the chat, and it's just a great way to connect with the fans, between shows.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I like to, stream games too. I don't. Sometimes I talk, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just stream, just to go back and watch and say, hey, where did I mess up for the thousandth time? And help me kind of win. Other times I get social. It's funny. It depends on the day because talking on the podcast. Sometimes I get tired of talking, so then I'm gaming. And gaming, I do a lot longer. Like I'll sit there 3, 4, 5 hours and play a game. and I'll forget that I'm like streaming because I'll talk the first half an hour through and be social, but I'm not watching the chats. I'm just playing the game, and all of a sudden I forget I'm streaming. So like the headset's not even on, and I'm just playing my own away, and I don't even know what people are talking about. It's like, oh, but I'll definitely have to check all that out because I'm big into that. I'm not, I guess I'm a nerd too, and I guess that's what's in right now. I mean, everything that people were made fun of so much in like earlier when I was in school is now like hip and like in, and people are doing it, and it's a cool thing to do. But there is so much also. I feel like a lot of crossing roads between wrestling, gaming, movies. It all kind of crosses over with characters, and people get inspirations. And like you said, there's monster truck games, there's wrestling games, there's all these different kind of games.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you can kind
absolutely.
of just like I said, get the kind of the fans into it because the fans are gonna, follow that. They like that, and they're gonna, oh wow, it's a wrestler playing it. That's so cool. Like I remember during the pandemic, or a little bit after, I think there was a show that they had like wrestlers playing basketball, like one on like a team against a team, and it was just this cool thing. It was wrestlers doing something different. Um, and it just goes, again, it shows that depth, and it shows, hey, they're human too. It's fun. Whether it happens, you'll see like gaming tournaments with even like major WWE stars will do like gaming. And when you do it kind of popular, like, oh wow, they play that game too. Like it's kind of big, and it draws even more everybody together. But let me ask you this, this is about out of time. How can everybody find you? How can they follow you? Where can they follow you?
Absolutely. I love plugging my stuff. So I'm across pretty much all the socials you would ever want to be on at Perry Von Vicious. I also do have perryvonvicious.com that has, you can learn a little bit more about me and some of the different things I do. Um, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, I stream on twitch.tv/Perry Von Vicious. And if you're not available then, if that's a rough time for you, there's a TV show you particularly like, you can't hang out and watch, maybe you got to work. I always upload the stream the next day. So you can also catch all of my streams in their entirety at youtube.com/Perry Von Vicious. You can also see my weekly vlogs there, where I cover everything from my travels on my own when I'm going to Disney parks or going to monster truck shows to traveling around with the other wrestlers to shows and wrestling. Sometimes I'm doing 3D printing. It really it spans all of my dorky nerdy interests, and I have plans in the near future to push that even further. I don't have an exact date yet, but I have started preparations for a live stream where I'm just going to play music. I'm going to break out my guitar and I'm going to cover all the punk songs that I used to play in my band when I toured back in 2002. I'm gonna play some weird, novelty music, bands that people might not know. I'm a huge nerd for novelty music. Any band that wears a costume, I'm totally all in. So I've got plans for that in the future. That'll be a live stream. And sometimes I'm streaming other stuff. Sometimes it's I'm unboxing toys or opening fan mail. I try to get all of it in there, and you can find all of that on the link tree on my socials at Perry Von Vicious. You can find everything there, or perryvonvicious.com. And yeah, it'd be great if everyone would go follow and subscribe to me everywhere, because as I close in on 40, my body's only got so many years left of being thrown at the ground before I'm going to have to rely on something else. And boy, if I could stream and vlog, that would be great.
Well, that's the beauty of social media now. You can get, streaming, you can get things going, and things can get moving, and it might not be a full living, but there's things where you can make money at this, and that's another just benefit of doing it. And you know what? Who doesn't like video games, right? I mean, um, I didn't know though you did a lot of music. That's cool. I like a lot of music too. I don't know much about guitars though at all. Actually, I just bought one though because like I do a lot of like electronic music. I do a lot of like hip hop and beat making and stuff. And my son was like, "You need a guitar. You need a guitar." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess." I went online. I went to Amazon. I bought one. I bought a sound box, PreSonus, some nice little sound box that hooks up. It hooks up to my mic. Oh, that's great. I have no idea how to tune the thing though. I don't even know what tune is supposed to be in the guitar. But I used to play keyboard, but maybe someday you'll have to tune the guitar for me. But yeah, that's cool though. That like I said, all these outlets, and that's what I think a lot of people don't get about pro wrestlers. And I've come across, I mean, there's not one that I haven't, that they're just filled with creativity. There's a lot of creativity out there. Um, and there's different avenues besides just the ring to kind of incorporate it into, whether it be, I've seen a lot of wrestlers into music, a lot of wrestlers into games, comics, cards, whatever it might be, but there's a lot of stuff into it, even art. It's just, and it's great to see it. It just really is. And then again, it draws people together. It's something that, to be honest with you, I don't think it happens enough. While all these things are really cool, working remote, and I'm a big fan for it, I was actually, as much as all the pandemic was terrible, I actually didn't mind things that much. Traffic was at an all-time low. I could go to Target whenever I felt like it and go toy shopping, and there was nobody there. It was beautiful. And there was a few other minute things that were just really nice that I could say, hey, that wasn't actually a bad time. Life was a little slower, and it wasn't, so race. But things do change. But now I have a few questions some people were asking. My wife wants. She wants to know what your favorite Disney ride is.
Oh man. So this is always really tough for me. It changes, it varies a little bit. Um, I think I think it's gotta be Pirates, and specifically Pirates of the Caribbean in California, because they're not identical. The one in California has something really special about it. You can find an old video when Walt was first introducing the ride, where he actually explains this about the ride. And the Florida one doesn't do this. Uh, when you first start the ride, you're in this world where it's the wreckage. It's present day. It's there's an island that you go by that has a couple skeletons with little bits of their pirate garb still on them, and there's a bird, and that's all that's left. And then you go down a really short little dip waterfall, and now the wreckage is fresh. It's skeletons, but the skeleton's still in a boat that hasn't hit land yet. And then you go down another waterfall, and now it's the yo ho yo, and you're in it. There's the huge ships firing at each other, the village on fire, all the classic pirate stuff as it's happening. And your escape after the whole village catches fire, you go back up a waterfall. There's water falling all around you as you go up, because you got into it by going down waterfalls. So you go back to present day by going up a waterfall. And I think that's beautiful storytelling. And I'm a sucker for the old rides, specifically anything that the Imagineer Mark Davis did the character
Yeah.
design for. And that's, when you think of the characters you see in Pirates or the Tiki Room or the Jungle Cruise or the Haunted Mansion, that it's a very specific character design. That's all Mark Davis, and I'm a huge sucker for that.
Yeah, definitely. And then the one in Florida is okay, but I haven't been to California. I'm supposed to go either this year or next. But now the way you just described it, that sounds like a voyage. And the one in Florida is kind of like a movie that you're kind of watching, but you don't really feel like you're in it. And they've incorporated a lot of the stuff from the new movie. I don't know if they did that in California, but I
They
know they
did,
were
and
gonna. But they did change over the years since I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, there was Johnny Depp wasn't doing pirate movies. But another ride that they got rid of in Florida that I think they still have in Cali is the Mr. Toad ride. I love that ride.
yeah, oh, it's a classic, and it actually it creates something really interesting. There's the story within the ride. You hit the point where he has his accident, and then the judge sends him to hell. And when you go in the hell room, it's hot. They have heaters that blow in there to make the room hot, so it feels like it should be hell. if you go on the Alice in Wonderland ride, not the teacups, they have that in Florida, but this is an actual Alice in Wonderland ride they also have in California. There's one room you go through that's weirdly hot, and it's because it's directly above that room in the Toad
Oh,
ride.
and the heat rises up. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
I mean,
I love that.
That's Disney magic. I mean, talk about showmanship, talk about illusion, talk about kayfabe. That's something that never breaks, and that's Disney. The Disney staff cast, they will never break for nothing.
Yep. Yeah, I actually a few weeks back I streamed the game Disneyland Adventures, which is literally just it's walking around the park.
Oh yeah,
And it was some of the most fun I've ever had doing a stream because I'm such an obsessive about that park specifically that I'm walking around and I found myself just giving like a guided tour. That was all I did. I didn't play any of the mini games. I didn't do any challenges. I just walked around and pointed stuff out for like an hour and a half. And early on, when I do these streams, I've got a good setup here with a few screens. On one screen, I always keep the Wikipedia page for the game up so that if I need to like reference it or see something, I can. And I'm going through it and I'm sort of saying like, yeah, it's weird. This is called this now, and oh, they changed what this looks like. What year was this? And I looked over and I saw that the game was released November 3rd, 2011,
yeah.
which means that game was released 4 days after I was married in Disneyland. So
Wow.
it's meant to reflect the park exactly as it was on the day I was married there, which is so cool and so weird.
What? That's
Yeah.
wild.
So
Yeah. But yeah,
I,
I know the game well. I play it. My wife, so like she loves those Disney games, especially when I play them. Because it does kind of, some of them are really like immersive. You feel like you're into the park. I was just, playing actually not the Roblox. My kid plays Roblox a lot, but I was playing the Minecraft Disney mod, and you're in Disney. They made like a whole Disney world out of Minecraft, and it's beautifully done. All those games, it's a lot of fun, and like I never shun or frown on people that play video games because I think it's another great escape in the world. Like wrestling, like music, like other things. It gets you out of that reality and into a fun place. Um, and
yeah,
again,
I can recommend to you and to anyone watching. There's a guy you can find him on Twitter at FuturePort82. He has been creating fully animating and creating, and you can do it in VR with like I have a VR headset, or you can just do it on your screen. A You can completely walk through. It's a perfect exact replica of Epcot on opening day in 1982. Full
really,
audio, full
I'm
everything.
gonna
You
have to
walk
look
in
that
and
up because I have an Oculus 3. That would be fun.
nice.
I'm big into, like I said, the VR and the gaming world, and I'm really excited to kind of see where they're gonna go with all the like the virtual parks, and will we see more immersion? Because Disney, like I said, is the forefront for all that. And I mean, if you want to really talk about like again showmanship, they do it better than anybody. They really step it up every single time. I've been there for my honeymoon. I've been there for a baby moon. I've been there. When I was younger, I went there. I've been a few times, and it's always something magical. They always, do some of the most wildest things, and really step it up. I mean, even when you go to some of the finest restaurants, they still will go above and beyond. We went to, for my for our honeymoon, we went to Victoria and Albert's, very nice restaurant. But they even went above and beyond that and brought us like an extra course of desserts and started us off with an extra, drink. We did the non-alcoholic pairing, so they brought us this extra, I don't even know what it was, but it was some kind. It said this, will help you digest your food.
Mm, mm.
And so, they go above and beyond regardless. Even it's something magical for people that never experienced it. It's just something totally different, and just like I said, it doesn't matter where we were in. Was it let's see, we went Animal Kingdom Lodge, first 2 nights. We did this safari, and then we got word that a hurricane was coming in. It's a couple of years ago, big hurricane was coming in. So we ended up, we were staying in 3 different places because we had different agendas. So we were going there, then we went to the Coronado, and then we were going to Pop the last few days. So we went to Coronado, and all of a sudden the storm hit, and everything shut down. They weren't letting, the parks were closed, everything was closed. I lost my tickets to I lost both tickets. I had tickets one night to Mickey's Magical Halloween, and then I had ones to the night at Universal. Everything just got shut down. But I have to say, the staff, the crew, everybody in the Coronado, they just did a tremendous job. They gave us activities, they gave us, food. They made sure, we didn't know there was a storm. People were coming into the hotel that lived in Florida because they didn't want to stay home. That's how well that they were being taken care of. And, they even helped me get my tickets back for the Mickey's Magical, Halloween show. But, great stuff. I got one more question before I let you go. If there's one match you could just look back on that you've had and be like, wow, I'm really proud of that. That's really a defining moment. What would you have to say it would be?
Boy, that's a tough one at 16 years in because there've been a lot. I think I'll go with one that's really recent and one that people can find easy because I know it's on YouTube. At Pro Wrestling Grind, I had a match last year with A Game Joseph Alexander, who is someone who's mm, 10, 15 years younger than me, and an incredible athlete. And I don't know what it was that night. It was before Japan, even because I came back from Japan lighter and faster than before I left, because of the what the training put me through there. That night, something clicked in my brain, and I just went for it. And you can see it. It's a faster, crazier Perry than I'd been in some time, and I'm keeping up with this incredible young athlete, and doing big power moves with a kid who honestly is not that much smaller than me. Like he's deceptively big. Like he seems smaller because he's quick and he's young, but like he's got some size to him. And doing things like he had me in a cross arm breaker and I deadlifted him up and do a power bomb into the buckle. The end of the match comes with I do a swanton from the top, and I mean I got him pretty good with that one. And the match overall is just something I'm very proud of. It was a great house at the show, and the fans at Grind have given me support that I feel is unearned. I can't imagine what I've done to deserve the kind of support they've given me. And A Game is also very much beloved by the fans there. So I don't think they had a favorite between the two of us. And we had a great time. And yeah, so not only do I recommend Perry Von Vicious versus Joseph A Game Alexander at Pro Wrestling Grind, you can find it on YouTube, but everyone should be keeping an eye on A Game Joseph Alexander. He is a phenomenal talent, and he gets better every time I see him.
That's great. That's wonderful. And we should see you soon. MPW, that's coming up, and there'll be some other shows I know we'll be getting to. And I just have to say, just keep killing out there, man. You're living it. That's awesome to see because, like I said, that's the dream, right? You want, as a kid, you want to be a pro wrestler, and now you are a pro wrestler.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thank you for taking the time again as well for coming on the show. Like I said, as a fan, I've been watching you for quite some time, and like I said, that transformation from that money suit now, like I said, Japan wrestler, streamer, I would never even think, you wouldn't even think maybe at that point that this would unfold like this, and even through the pandemic and unfold even more. And it's just like, wow, it's like, it's wild. But thank you again, and can't wait to see you out there.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody at home. It's been a great episode, and as always, please support indie wrestling. Versace Stoner out.
Welcome to the Kill City Cup. I got the world by the